what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another one. Hope all is well. This is the ongoing saga of the singer D4VD, or David. I call him D4VD. He appeared in court. Obviously, he's not looking like himself. This picture here depicts really how they said he looks. His hair is all disheveled. He hasn't shaved. He looks unkept. And this is just the reality of being in LA County Jail or wherever they're holding him. So he's not living the luxury that he used to live. But in fact, I think he was living in hell, to be honest with you, but because he knew this day was coming. But what's interesting is some things happen in court. The number one question is, first of all, when will this trial start? Will he get a speedy trial? Will this trial take years to start? That's the number one question, because they keep pushing back hearing dates. They keep doing it. And that's what they're talking about here. And the prosecutor is saying that they are eager to have this trial. But it's a lot, they already said there's terabytes of evidence. There's a lot going on in this case. So when will this case get to court? And so we're going to listen to a little bit of this right now.
We got a court hearing in the David case that happened today. We have a reporter, an investigative reporter in the courtroom. Going to bring her on in a minute to talk about what happened. Now remember where we're at. The 21-year-old romantic homicide singer, real name David Anthony Burke, David, is facing charges of first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains, all in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose decomposed, dismembered body was found in a Tesla in LA in connection with the death. Charges of first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains, all in connection with the death of 14-year-old. Continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains, all.
I just wanted to listen to the last charge, unlawful mutilation of human remains. That's not life in prison. Let's just say, if he's lucky, he gets off on the murder charges. He gets off on the other stuff, right? That's not life in prison, believe it or not, mutilation of a corpse. It's not. They have to prove that he actually killed her. And what was the circumstances leading up to that? I think they got him dead to rights, though. I think he said a lot of things in the emails and stuff like that. But we'll see. Let's continue.
In connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose decomposed, dismembered body was found in a Tesla in LA back on September 8th of last year. A Tesla reportedly registered to David out in Texas. And prosecutors have also alleged special circumstances with respect to the murder charge. That's what gets you potentially life in prison without the possibility of parole. That's what potentially gets you the death penalty, even though there's a moratorium on executions in California. Murder of a witness, murder for financial gain, lying in wait. That he used a deadly.
Let me just say this. Yes, there is a there is a moratorium on the death penalty in California. But what if a new governor gets elected and wants the death penalty back? And so he can always have that hanging over his head. So that's not a good thing. But right now, that's true. There's a moratorium on actually carrying out these death sentences. They put a halt to it. So yeah, they're right about that.
And dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument. And the ME's office concluded that Celeste's cause of death was multiple penetrating injuries. Authorities alleging that David murdered Celeste to keep her quiet, that they were in an alleged illegal sexual relationship, her being a minor, that she was going to expose him, that she was going to ruin his career, a financially lucrative career. I did whole episodes on the potential evidence establishing where he was at in his career. They also talk about these alleged text messages the day before, the night before, where she was allegedly angry with him and going to expose him. And the allegation is that he murdered her to keep her quiet. And prosecutors claim that on April 23rd, 2025, he lured Celeste to this property in LA, Hollywood Hills, stabbed her repeatedly, watched her bleed out, and then proceeded to order supplies online to engage in the dismemberment of her body and the cover-up of this alleged crime. Chainsaws, body bag, laundry bags, inflatable pool. They claim a combination of forensic evidence, surveillance footage, cellular data, DNA evidence, witness testimony, all ties him to these alleged crimes. So what?
Surveillance footage. Did you hear that? They said surveillance footage tie him to these crimes. I want to know, did they get the surveillance footage from the house, and what did they actually see? Did they see her go into the house and see her not come out? I bet you they have all of that. I bet you they do, guys. I bet you they have that, because I want to know, do they have, for the last day that she has been seen alive, do they have her going inside the house and coming out and not coming out? Yeah, this is, I believe they got him dead to rights here.
What happened in court today? For that, let me bring on somebody who was in that courtroom today. Investigative reporter Julia Deng is with us. Julia, so good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about this. Really appreciate it. I'm made of questions. I know this was a relatively short hearing, but very impactful, very important. First of all, how did David look? Let's start there.
Not great, Jesse, as you can imagine. I mean, we've talked about how he actually requested a haircut last time. It doesn't look to me like he got that haircut. He walked in wearing this orange LA County jail uniform, kind of lighter than what I'm wearing right now. He had a white long-sleeved shirt underneath it. He did not look clean shaven. Hair looked to be a little bit longer, very curly. But he was actively paying attention. You know, he was looking from attorney to attorney as they were speaking during this very brief status conference. And he did speak this morning. This is actually my first time hearing.
I bet you he is looking pretty disheveled. He is, from the pictures I see, he looks terrible. Of course he's going to look terrible. He's not getting good sleep. He's thinking about, I'm sure they're watching him, so he won't do what what's his name did, if you know what I mean, in New York City. He's under constant watch. He's under, constant surveillance, because what happens if, you know what I mean, he's under, you ever thought for a second, let me just say this, like your life is bad, right? But just think about his life. He got some money. He got some really, he did good for himself. He was just on the come up. Now he in this situation. It's just not worth it. Nothing is worth it, guys. Nothing. Nothing's worth your freedom. We talk about the luxuries and stuff like that, but you might not have all the luxuries he had, but you not sitting up in prison and can't get out. You know what I'm saying? I know it's all relative. I don't want to say, I don't want to minimize anybody's struggles or anything like that, because it's all relative. When you're going through something, it's the worst in the world. It don't matter what it is. But just think about it right now, how he looks. Is he going to survive this, guys? Like, what do you think? Like, they're going to have him under constant surveillance. And he's by himself. So let's hear this.
His voice live. It was brief. He just said, "Yes, Your Honor," when the judge addressed him. And it was a question about pushing back the upcoming in this case. So It is still, a question as to whether or not this is going to trial. And the big takeaway from this morning's status conference is that we are going to have to do this exercise all over again. So there's going to be another status conference June 17th.
Okay, listen to what they're saying about these status conferences. Like, when is this trial going to start? Could this take years to start? Could this be like, this trial could potentially be 5 years from now? And here's the thing, he got to sit right up in prison if that's the case. They've already talked about there's terabytes of data to go through. So the key question here is, when is this thing going to get to trial?
And in this preliminary hearing that we've been talking about, May 26th, And as you've been reporting, Jesse, that was supposed to happen back in April. So now they've pushed that back again. That's going to be June 29th now. So David Burke was asked, are you okay with that? And he just said, yes, Your Honor, and that he was led back out.
Okay, so I have a number of questions about this. There are those who say they wouldn't be surprised that the preliminary hearing was pushed back yet again. I mean, even if you talk about what's been reported, 40 terabytes of evidence, computers, tablets, iCloud. Even in the prosecution's brief, they talk about surveillance footage and cellular data and witnesses and different trips and all these Amazon purchases. And it's a big case, and it's one that has been investigated for quite some time. At the same time, Julia, I'm trying to understand why this is happening, because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the defense who's asking now to have a delay, because weren't they the ones who said Blair Burke, his attorney, was pushing for a speedy preliminary hearing as soon as possible? And it was the idea, we're going to challenge the prosecution's evidence. We're going to challenge, because in a preliminary hearing, so everybody knows, right, the prosecution has to present not their whole case, but sufficient evidence to establish probable cause, low standard, but say, hey, we got enough here to support these charges, to move.
I got a feeling this is going to drag out. I do. I was thinking, am I going to attend the trial or what? I don't know if I'm going to attend the trial. I don't know. I think this thing is going to drag out, guys.
Forward towards trial, preliminary hearing, why it's an advantage for the defense is because they can challenge that evidence. So they wanted the prosecution, hey, we want this a preliminary hearing immediately. We want to see what you got. We want to challenge it. We don't think you have a case here. We don't think he's the cause of Celeste's death. And now, and correct me if I'm wrong, are they the ones today in court saying we need a delay?
They are. That is correct. And Jesse, you're absolutely right. This boils down to evidence. So Beth Silverman, with the prosecution, she laid out how there is just voluminous evidence here. It totals, at this point, more than 40 terabytes.
Stop. She said that the evidence is voluminous. Okay? The evidence is voluminous. We have more than 40 whatever terabytes of data. I don't know, guys, if this is going to go to trial. We'll see. Beth Silverman, that's what she said. I believe she's the lead prosecutor on this case. There's a lot of data here that they have to go through. They want a speedy trial. I'm sure his lawyers want a speedy trial, but however, they want all the evidence as well to see what the prosecutor is going to throw at him. You don't want no surprises when it comes to trial.
I mean, if you think about how much content you probably had saved on your phone, I mean, that's not even close to 1 terabyte. They have 40 in this case. So Beth said this morning during this hearing, the prosecution started uploading their evidence last Thursday. And that's part of this case. They have to do that. Sharing that information between both sides, that's part of discovery. So Beth says the prosecution started that last Thursday. They have only uploaded, at this point, about 10 terabytes out of that 40. And then she went on to say, I actually wrote down this direct quote from Beth Silverman this morning, it could take them months to complete discovery with this much evidence. So now the defense is pushing back. This is very much part of their strategy. This is not surprising. You know, they would benefit from having more time just to prep their case. So they said, the defense, you know, we've requested DNA evidence. We have not gotten that yet. They also said they haven't gotten the witness narratives they were hoping for. So their argument is we need more intel to prep before this can even go to a preliminary hearing. But the prosecution, of course, also not surprising, they're pushing back as well. They're saying, you know, is this going to be a real thing? Is June 29th going to be, they called it a go date? Or are we going to have to go through this again? Push it back again? The judge was very stern about that. She said, you know, we have to be clear. If we're setting the date for June 29th this time, if this is going to be pushed back again, a fourth time now, you know, we have to get that motion in writing. Beth Silverman says this kind of thing can go on she's, in her experience, had this kind of thing go back and forth and be delayed for years. The judge saying this morning she promises this is not going to go on for years. So I think June 17th is going to be a sure thing for this new status conference, and then June 29th.
Well, here's what's tricky about it. It's prosecutors, seemingly, even though there was reports of multiple grand juries, and grand jury could be a way you get an official indictment. Defense doesn't have a role in it. It's a secret proceeding. You get an indictment, you move forward. If you don't go a grand jury route, and clearly there hasn't been a grand jury indictment, even though there have been reportedly grand juries impaneled to hear evidence in this case, now you have a preliminary hearing. And 100%, this is where it gets complicated because the defense has an opportunity to challenge the evidence. It can get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and delayed. And just from a point of law, I'll tell everybody, that's a concern for the prosecution, right? They believe that David committed these alleged crimes. They want justice as soon as possible. They don't want to keep pushing this case along. Evidence can get stale. Witness testimony could be upended. So it's in there.
That's the thing. They don't want this thing to last years. I thought about that. Like, is this thing going to go on for years? And yeah, I mean, if they have all this data, I know the prosecutors are eager to bring this thing to trial. They don't want this thing to last years, but I mean, just what if that is in the cards and how this all plays out, so.
Their interest, too, to have this
Right.
preliminary hearing sooner rather than later. And by the way, when you mention DNA evidence, you go back to the prosecution's brief. It says DNA evidence developed from blood stains collected from defendant's garage, which match the victim's genetic profile. So that was interesting. By the way, you mentioned...
How is this going to trial? They got her blood, her DNA at that. Oh, my God. Please tell me they don't have her blood. They have her blood there in the garage, because that's more than likely where this thing took place. How is this going to trial, man? How is he not taking a deal? Like, right now, I know it's still early in the process. Trust me, it's still early, but it's crazy. I think they got him dead to rights.
Witnesses. Do we have any idea, was it revealed today, any idea who these potential witnesses are?
We don't. That is one of those outstanding.
Time out. I told you, I said this in a live chat, somebody snitching. Guys, somebody snitching on him. Somebody is. Somebody's snitching. Who is it going to be? It all points to him, dog.
Standing questions, and I think, Jesse, you actually did an entire podcast segment dedicated to this question. We don't, and it sounds like part of the defense's strategy to just stall here and buy themselves a little bit more time to prepare during this pretrial period is citing the fact that they don't have any kind of narrative relating to witnesses. They don't know who the possible witnesses might be who could be called for this case. And they don't have DNA evidence. They say they've requested. But let me tell you what the prosecution...
David knows. That's who knows. They need to talk to their client. He knows who the potential witnesses could be. He knows. It could be her former classmates, because you remember there's a story out there saying that he went to her school giving them alleged hush money. They could be witnesses. Who else? The Uber driver that picked her up that night, and when she wasn't seen again, he could be a potential witness. Neighbors could be a potential witness. Who else could be a potential witness? More than likely his family, because they matter, I heard, allegedly. There's a lot of potential witnesses here. Yeah.
Did share. They say they have already shared lab reports, they have shared LAPD reports, and they've shared, again, about 10 terabytes of evidence. So if it really is 40 terabytes, that's about 25% here. And I don't know what kind of server they're uploading this to, but again, they started doing this last Thursday. So open-ended question here as to how much longer that's going to take. But talking to media crews out here, we've all been speculating, there's likely a lot of video content. in that 40 terabyte dump. That's typically what takes up the most space. So we already know some of that video.
Probably some of that video involving him and her, if you know what I mean. I don't see how he's going to survive this. I don't. How is he innocent? I know he's innocent to prove him guilty, but how? But how?
Involving Celeste and David and their alleged relationship that will not be played for the jury if this eventually does go to trial.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because as we're understanding what this is, I remember
typically what takes up the most space. So we already know some of that video involving Celeste and David and their alleged relationship that will not be played for the jury if this eventually does go to trial.
Okay, so that answered my question there. So there, videos, you know what I mean, relationship videos, that is not going to be played in trial, because that will be just like, you might as well just, all right, what kind of deal y'all giving me? Yeah, that's not going to be played in trial. They can't be, because she's a minor. You can't play that stuff in court. Can't play that. So yeah, that answered my question there. I'm sure some of you had the same question.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because as we're understanding what this is, I remember in one of the initial hearings, the prosecution said they found a large volume of alleged child pornography on David's devices. Now, they didn't confirm that was 100% Celeste, but let's remember he is charged with a sex crime with respect to her. This alleged illegal sexual relationship is not only its own individual crime, but it goes to the murder charge. It goes to the special circumstances, because if they can prove he was having this relationship with her, didn't want it exposed, wanted to keep her quiet, she was threatening him, that goes into it. And of course, I mean, there's other digital data, there's cell phone data, there's surveillance footage. By the way, just taking a quick step back, since you're our eyes and ears there, was it a packed courtroom? Like, who else was there? Was there anybody in support of David? Was Nathan Hochman there, the Los Angeles County District Attorney? Who was in that courtroom today?
That was my other question as well. Who was all in the courtroom? Do he got any family there, like, supporting him? I mean,
it was largely media this morning. We did look around in the hallway before we even got into the status conference to see if perhaps he had any supporters. I know last time, during his last court date, David did have at least two supporters with him. There was no family present this morning, nobody for either David or Celeste. I think it was just the defendant with his uncut hair, So it was largely media in the back two rows in this courtroom, prosecution, defense, and it.
Yeah, so they're saying it was largely media and stuff like that. So move this over. Yeah, so they said it was largely media and stuff. So that's what I want to know. Do he got any supporters there, like family, friends, and stuff like that? So, but anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up here. But as of right now, they're trying to figure out when is he going to go to trial. Like, when is this because there's going to keep being status hearings. You can have status hearings for a very long time. Going over certain trying to throw this key piece of evidence out. We had to throw this key piece of evidence out. But you got terabytes of data. But I understand that a lot of the data is not going to be used if it's involving him and her, if you know what I mean. So that was a question I had. I was like, I don't know if they're going to be able to play that to the jury. But that's where it is right now, man. David is not looking good, guys. As you can see from this photo, from this depiction here. And I saw a video. He like, yes, Your Honor. Yeah. But anyway, drop a comment below. Let me know how you feel about this. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.